Japan has one, the Russians have one. Here in America, there's 2 different companies, SpaceX and Orbital Sciences, that have cargo ships. So at any given time, there's always one type of cargo ship docked to the space station, and it's got food and clothes and spare parts and oxygen and nitrogen and anything we need. But in addition to that, it takes away our trash. Imagine if you kept putting the trash in your garage and you never could take it to the street. Eventually it builds up so it overcomes the whole garage. Well, the same thing happens on the space station. We need to get rid of trash on a regular basis, and so that's what these cargo ships are for. Speaking of food, here's making scrambled eggs. Most of the food is dehydrated, where it's this dry material. We stick it in the water machine, add a little bit of water, and let it sit for a bit, kind of like a camping meal, and then it's ready to go. It's really tasty. It's not like we're squirting food out of a tube of toothpaste or anything like that. It's really, really good food. Here's Karen's strawberry shortcake concoction with them. So food is not a problem. In fact, there's so much of it that it's easy to eat too much. There's one of the cargo ships burning up in the atmosphere. All that trash, when we load it up, it burns up and pretty much disintegrates before anything can return down to Earth. Exercise is a big part of our time on the space station, not so much to stay fit, but really to keep our bones healthy. If we did no exercise up there, our bones would get much less dense and very brittle. Like an elderly person is susceptible to broken bones when you fall. That's how we would be as well. So you have to trick your bones into think that they need to be normal, and we do that with weightlifting, a little bit on the treadmill, but mostly weightlifting in your legs and your lower back to keep all these big muscles, big bones active. So, at the end of 5.5 or 6 months, it was time to come home. That same Soyuz that we launched in and got there with 6 months ago has been docked the whole time. It's our emergency escape vehicle should we need it. And fortunately we didn't need it. We get in on coming home day. And it's about 5 hours from the time we close the hatch until we're down on the ground in Kazakhstan. And during that 5 hours, some crazy stuff happens. I don't know if in your science classes you've heard the term conservation of energy. Well, think about all of the energy you see on a launch. The heat, the flames, and the smoke has to come back out of the vehicle when you come in. And it does so in the form of this heating on the outside. And there's a heat shield on the bottom of the capsule to keep us alive. And once you burn through the atmosphere, you tumble for a bit, the parachute's open, inside the cockpit you're spinning all around until it finally stabilizes and starts falling nice and flat like it is here. You're under the parachute for about 15 minutes or so and float on down to the ground. The Russian capsule lands on land. We had really nice weather when we landed in September, and so the helicopters were right there. As soon as we touched down, the rescue guys were there within 10 or 15 minutes, opening the hatch to pull us out. They physically carry us out, you can see here. I probably could have gotten up myself and gotten out, but it would not have been fun, it would not have been comfortable, I would have been sick, and it's very, very heavy. Even just holding your head up feels like it weighs 1,000,000 pounds because you're just not used to dealing with the weight. So they pull us out, put us in these chairs, do some medical kind of stuff right here, give us a phone, we call home, you say, I just landed, and they go, I know, I'm watching on TV, okay, that's about the end of that conversation. It's very awkward. And then we get put into a medical tent where we take off that white spacesuit, put on this outfit here, fly on a helicopter to a nearby NASA airplane, and that NASA airplane flew me from Kazakhstan all the way back to Houston. So a little bit less than a day from landing in the middle of nowhere, I was back into Johnson Space Center in Houston. So that was about 1.5 years ago, and since then I've been supporting other missions, but what I'd really like to do now is hear your questions, because that's most fun for me, is to hear what you guys have to say. Who's going to be the first one?
If you raise your hand, I'll bring you a microphone.
Or anybody in here, I can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me get the microphone.
Go ahead and say it.
Like how many buttons were in the space ship?
How many buttons are in the spaceship? The shuttle actually has much more than the Soyuz. I'm not really sure the number, but if you sit in a shuttle cockpit, there's just switches everywhere you can see, and it's hard to actually know where they all go to. The Soyuz is much smaller. It has a lot less switches, and they've converted some of their displays to be digital, so you can do some of the selections on the computer and not have to have it. I would say maybe 150 switches. Yeah.
Do you have to do a lot more weight in space than like an exercise?
Oh, exercising. He's asking, do you have to change the weight while you're up there? The way the machine works, it's this air piston, and you crank a handle that moves the piston up and down, and it's got a little number on the outside that tells you what the equivalent weight is. So if you are a person that can squat 200 pounds here on Earth, you crank the handle to 200 there, and you do it, and it feels the very same. So you don't really have to increase any. Occasionally, the machine gets out of calibration, but that's not really not what you're asking. Yeah.
Can you play basketball in space?
Can you play basketball in space? We have a Nerf basketball hoop up there, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Houston sports, but Dwight Howard is our center there. But the Houston Rockets were trying to get Dwight Howard to come, and so they asked me, said, "Hey, would you mind making a video for Dwight Howard?" So I took the Nerf basketball hoop and was floating all the way through and doing these crazy dunks. And I hear they sent it to Dwight Howard. He's now in Houston, so maybe it worked. I don't know, but yes, you can play basketball there.
In your Navy SEAL training, what were some of the things that you did?
In my Navy SEAL training, what were some of the things that I did? Well, that's a big question. There's the parts about getting qualified to it and to become a SEAL, and that you kind of see on TV with lots of running around and paddling boats and having logs over your head and doing obstacle course kind of things. When I got into the SEAL teams, one of my favorite things that I did was driving an underwater vehicle, a little submersible, kind of like a submarine, but you're diving inside it. That was some cool stuff. Yeah, way in the back of the blue sweater. Is it dark in space? Is that what you said? Yeah, so we're going around the world every 90 minutes. So when you're on the sunny side of Earth, it's really, really bright. And when you go around the dark side of Earth, it's pitch dark. And darker than any, well, there's probably, if you go in the woods here, around here in the pitch dark, I imagine it gets pretty dark on a moonless night. It rivals, that kind of dark is getting close to what it's like out there, but it is absolutely pitch dark on the backside of the Earth. And it's almost eerily dark. When you're outside doing a spacewalk, you have to have the lights on to see just a little bit in front of you. And the yellow shirt right in the back.
Did you ever get any souvenirs?
Did I what?
Did you ever get any souvenirs?
Any souvenirs?
Yeah.
Well, we're allowed to bring some small amount of things with us to space that mean something to us, like mementos from friends and family, charm bracelets, rings are common types of things, or a memento from your college or hometown, these types of things. And so I more brought stuff up for other people and then gave it back to them than my own thing. There's a few things I got that I wanted for myself, like some equipment from my space suit that they were going to throw away, but other than that, not that much. Yes?
What's the scariest thing about going to space?
What's the scariest thing about going to space? I think it's coming home day. Launch day is kind of scary, and if you're not a little bit nervous, you just don't appreciate the chemical reaction that's happening underneath you. But coming back, there's a lot that has to go right for it to be completely normal, and that's where I think the bulk of the risk is coming back into Earth's atmosphere. Yeah.
What do you all sleep in?
What do we sleep in? So we have these, well, each person has a sleeping quarters that's about the size of a refrigerator, which sounds kind of small, but it's plenty big. And we take our sleeping bag and we stick it we tie it with strings to the wall, one wall, and we get in, zip it up. It's got little armholes where you can stick your arms out. Sleeping's interesting in space because if you're a pillow person, I like a pillow, you don't really know what to do with your neck. And it takes a little while to get used to just having your neck kind of float there. And then the other thing is, what do you do with your arms? You either just kind of leave them inside your sleeping bag, but then it gets a little stuffy. If you put them outside, which is what I did most of the time, your arms just kind of float, and they move around with the air conditioning wind, and sometimes it would wake me up with my arms moving. So your neck and your arms are the weird things about sleeping. But other than that, sleeping is very easy and comfortable in space. Yeah.
Do you ever wake up with cramps?
Do you ever wake up with cramps? I don't think I ever did. Some people have. It all has to do with hydration and if you're drinking enough water, because it's easy to not drink enough water up there when you get busy during the day. Yeah.
What's the average temperature of the spaceship inside of it?
The average temperature on the inside of the spaceship is very comfortable. We just set the thermostat to whatever we want, just kind of like in your house or whatever. It's in Celsius for whatever reason. So we'd set it at like 22 or 23 degrees Celsius, which is like, I don't know, whatever that is, 70, 75 or something along those lines. But very, very comfortable. We just wear shorts and t-shirt.
What's like the best meal that like they have?
He's asking what's the best meal that we have up there. My favorite was seafood gumbo. I like that a whole lot. There's lots of different, Fiesta chicken was good. I mean, there's a ton. And people get pretty creative too with mixing things. Now it's interesting when you eat, all you really need is a spoon. No matter what you're eating, it just sticks to the spoon. The things that are really hard to eat are dry things like rice, scrambled eggs that don't have enough water in them. They all just kind of crumble. Trying to eat a bag of chips is a complete train wreck. And so it's those types of things that are hard. But soup and anything with some moisture to it is very easy to eat because it just sticks right to the spoon. And the food is all made most of it is made at the Johnson Space Center Food Lab, where a team of people actually make it and then put it into containers and remove the water and dehydrate it. Or some of the pouches are actual pouches, like a military meal ready to eat. And then another portion of the food is just stuff that they go out in town and buy at Kroger's or whatever. And if there's ever a shortage of chocolate on the planet Earth, it's because it's all on the International Space Station. Yeah.
Did you pour out a bottle of water and try to drink it?
Yeah, so like how does water behave up there? You guys know what Capri Suns are, right? Most of our water containers are like a Capri Sun, except it's got a little adapter where you can add more water to it and reuse that pouch. And there's a straw that goes in there, so we sip it out just like a Capri Sun. If you want to, you can take a blob of water and squeeze it out and make a ball, and then you can go up and sip right out, put your lips right on that ball of water as it's floating around in the air and sip it, or take a straw and poke it into the ball and suck it down that way. And it's kind of fun to do with different types of liquid, like you take a ball of water and then maybe put a ball of fruit punch in it and a ball of coffee in it, and different colors of things, and see as those things interact. You don't want to mess up with the fruit punch and coffee because then you end up cleaning it later. Yeah.
How heavy was the spacesuit?
How heavy is a spacesuit? The white one that you see that I showed you here, on Earth it's about 325 pounds. So it's pretty heavy. The bulk of that weight is all in the backpack because the backpack has all of the things that you need to keep you alive. But in space, you can't even feel that weight. I mean, you feel a little bit of it as you have, kind of like you would feel giving a person a piggyback ride. You can tell that you can't turn as quickly, but you can easily move. How about way in the back in the red?
Do Americans and the Russians do the same job in the space shuttle?
Good question. Do the Americans and the Russians do the same job? Well, the space station is called the International Space Station, which means that there's 5 partner nations, US, Russia, Japan, Canada, and the European Space Agency. And there's different modules from each, but essentially half of it is Russian and half of it is the US and the other partners. And the Russian cosmonauts, they spend all of their day, every day, on the Russian end, and the Mission Control Center in Moscow tells them what their jobs are, and they define what their daily work is going to be, pretty much all on the Russian side. And same thing for us, we get all of our direction from the Mission Control Center in Houston, and all of our jobs are on the US side of the space station. We can go back and forth and help each other if if I know that one of them has a tough job and they need another set of hands, I can go back there and help. But it's their responsibility to do those jobs, and it's our responsibility to do stuff on our side. And then interactive-wise, like socially, we'll get together maybe, you'd think we'd have every meal together, all 6 people, but it doesn't work out that way in practice with busy days and stuff. So usually on Friday nights or Saturday nights, we would have a big group dinner and just relax and not feel rushed. Go ahead.
Okay, so you said that, like, you work with your finance. So we can you have, like, a bunch of nights in one day?
Yeah, he said we go around the world every 90 minutes, so don't you get a bunch of nights in a day. And you're absolutely right. It takes, if you do the math, you get 16 orbits of the Earth in one 24-hour period. So we'll see the sunrise and sunset 16 different times in that one time. And that's if you're looking out the window. If you're just inside and you're doing your thing, you really can't tell that it's dark or night out because you're just inside the spaceship. Yeah.
When you served as Capcom, what did you do?
So when I served as Capcom, that's a position in mission control that you guys may be seeing in these space movies where they got the layout of mission control and there's all these different people in there. And there's a flight director who's kind of in charge of the whole room. And then there's Capcom sits right next to the flight director. And anything that needs to be said to the crew up in space, the Capcom is the one that vocalizes that. So you're kind of a team with the flight director saying, okay, we think we should tell them this, we need to do this. And so you're talking back and forth with the crew. That was my main job. Right here.
What are you supposed to do if you're outside of the shuttle?
What are you supposed to do if your tether breaks? Well, there's a couple things. First of all, we have, to get into more detail than what I showed in the video, there's that retractable tether that I think you're asking about, if that one breaks. Well, we also have a small little kind of 3-foot long fixed one that we can clip in and keep ourselves safe that way. We also have our hands, we don't want to let go of our hands. But if all those things fail, we have a small little jetpack in our backpack that you can pull out and, in theory, drive yourself back to the space station. But nobody's ever had to do that. And it would be actually kind of hard because you'd be tumbling away in some weird rotation and have to fix that and then get back. So there's several ways to accomplish it, but it's not something you want to do. Here in the blue. Yeah.
Well, I was watching the show and they said like there's someone with a job at NASA where their job is to like smell things, take them to space.
Smell things in space? Yeah, we do have lots of different jobs at NASA. It's not just astronauts, engineers, scientists, outreach people, and smelling people, apparently. But I don't know if that's their whole job is to smell stuff, but there is a group of folks that analyze and test things that we take to space to make sure that there's no funny gases that come off those pieces of material once it gets in a vacuum or this type of thing. So that's probably what I think they're referring to. Yeah. Did I grow? Yeah, so that's a good question. So what happens is your spine right now is a certain the gaps between your vertebrae are a certain distance here on Earth. When you get to space, the gravity is not pulling your upper body down to your lower body, so your spine elongates and those gaps get bigger. So you grow about 1.5 inches while you're in space. And so it's very common to have lower back pain when you first get to space and kind of trying to get it all sorted out. And then the same thing when you come back, because that 1.5 inches goes right back to normal within a day, less than a day probably. So again, when you come back to Earth, you kind of have these aches and pains in your back as it's all getting sorted out again. And then you have one right there.
What was the biggest room in the space shuttle?
The biggest room in the space shuttle. So the space shuttle just had two rooms, a mid-deck and a flight deck. And then on the space station, I think you mean, the space station has, I think 11 different modules, but the biggest one is the Japanese module because it has this additional closet type thing on the top. So it's very spacious, and the Japanese are very particular about what can go in there, so it's not very cluttered. Just a couple more questions, yeah.
What was your favorite part about being in space?
My favorite part about being in space was probably a tie between doing spacewalks and just simply looking out the window at Earth and realizing that how lucky I am to have this view and to be able to look down and see it, just the whole United States go under it, or all parts of the world pass by underneath me with just browns and greens and blues and white swirly clouds and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I've seen people in like videos on the space station doing like flips and stuff.
Oh yeah, every astronaut does flips and spins and tries to figure out how you can, how much you can do without crashing into the walls, and it's a lot of fun to try to do that. And you can experiment, like a figure skater, when they start twirling, they can bring their arms in and go faster and faster and faster, and all that has to do with momentum and changes in how you move your center of gravity, and we experiment with all that stuff too. One more question back there in the back, yeah.
What was your favorite part about being in space?
Oh, my favorite part about being in space, we just sort of talked about it, looking out the window, and spacewalks are probably the tie of those two things. Well, anyways, thank you guys for your attention. You were really, really good, and let's hope Kentucky can continue the winning streak all the way through.
Part of the